is Ray Carsillo for 1050 ESPN, 1050ESPN.com, and I have the pleasure of talking with Bill Roper now, who is the executive producer of Champions Online, the newest MMORPG from Cryptic Studios. And now, Bill, as a fan of MMORPGs, and as somebody who's played one of Cryptic's larger titles in the past, City of Heroes and City of Villains, what I have to ask is the most obvious question, is what's the difference between City of Heroes and Champions Online?
Really the single biggest difference between Champions Online and really almost any other MMO is customization. In Champions Online, it's all about making an iconic hero that you envision, right? So everything from the powers you choose, where they come from, the colors of those powers, the costume choices, your backstory, even up to creating a nemesis that you fight, like your biggest arch enemy, right? You know, it's all about giving the players the tools and the power to make exactly what they want to make, and then have that experience in the world that we've built for them.
Now, you mentioned you can create an arch nemesis, but there might be a problem with that. Is that if you can create your own arch nemesis, wouldn't you want to make him weaker, probably?
Well, we make sure you don't do that, right? You basically choose, you use the same tools that you use to make your hero. So you go in, you choose from core power sets that you want him to have. You actually choose their minions, you choose your nemesis, what they use, his motivations or her motivations, design their whole costume, and then basically they run on a completely different AI than any other enemy that you fight in the game, and you just start choosing their core power sets. So it's really difficult to pick like, oh, I'm going to make them super weak against me, because they're really effective in those power sets. So we really want the nemesis gameplay to be very involving from a story standpoint and also really challenging for players. And I think one of the best things about it is that you can share it with people. So you can have people go with you and ally up with you and help you defeat your nemesis. So it's like I'm making content for everybody else to play, so I can show off to my friends, right, this cool enemy that I built.
So you can basically create a nemesis not only for yourself, but for other people as well.
Right. They go through the content with you if you want them to. The game's really designed around being very solo-friendly. If I want to play by myself and kind of be that lone wolf hero, I can definitely do that. But if I want to jump in, get a bunch of friends together, get a team, build a super group, I can do that too. And a lot of the content scales to meet whether I'm by myself or have 5 or 10 or 20 people with me.
Now, of course, you said customization of powers. What kind of powers are we looking at? How many different variations from martial arts, fire? Like, what are we looking at here?
There's actually 18 core power sets in the game. Everything from electricity and fire and ice through, single blade, dual blade, martial arts, munitions, powered armor, even to things that are a little more esoteric like sorcery or supernatural or telekinesis or darkness. So really, all these kind of core ideas for powers that you see in comics, right? I think the big thing where the system really takes off is that you can stay within a power set. If I want to make a fire-based hero and really stick to being very pure in that concept, I can do that very easily. But if I want to dig into the mechanics, if I have some crazy idea for a hero, right, I can go in and make a custom framework. Say I want to make a character that's a elemental master, so I'm going to choose some fire and some ice and some lightning. I want to put those together, and then maybe I'm going to take some darkness powers, and you can really design exactly the hero you see in your head. And that's really the power of the system, is I can constantly customize what I'm doing with my hero, not only how they look, but how they play and all the little mechanics involved.
Now, you mentioned the different powers, but is there a chance possibly later in the game to develop more powers? Could you have a fire hero who develops flight or super strength?
Definitely. And again, that's everything whatever you want to do with your hero. So if you start making a fire guy and you said, oh, but I want him to be like the power of the sun, so he's going to be really strong too, right? I could actually go in, visit the tailor, I could change his costume. I could add additional costumes that show the growth of my character. I could change the scale, so maybe he started normal, but I make him like really big and buff, a little squatter to show that he's been to the sun and he's been condensed by gravity. And then I want to give him normally, and before I gave him flight, but I've earned a second travel power, so I'm going to give him fire flight, which does damage when I fly past guys, and it's this fiery trail. I can continue to alter my characters as I go along, and really have the ability, as long as I'm continuing to play the game and kind of build up these in-game resources, I can go and change my look, change my powers. On the fly, I can change the color of my powers. So let's say I started with the fiery stuff and it was more red, but I went, oh no, I want my guy to be, be more of I want to change him. He's going to be the blue flame, so I'm going to change all his fire powers to blue and everything. I mean, pretty much anything you can imagine you can do.
Now, you mentioned about the visuals and how everything looks. You also went for a cel-shaded look in terms of graphics. Why did you make that choice?
Really, the idea for the look was to bring that concept of four-color comics to life, right? So we started with actually the idea of just a basic cell shading and pushed into what we call comic shading. So it's very detailed. It's almost more graphic novel. And there's a lot of ways you can tweak it. You can have black outlines if you want. You can remove outlines. If you want a little more realistic look. A lot of graphic settings to really play with. because we wanted to have that feeling that you were living in a comic, you know, and living in a superhero world. So what better way to do that than to have that look that players associate with that?
Now, you mentioned before you can create your own arch nemesis. Can you tell us a little bit about the plot of the game and how it's going to go?
Sure. The plot behind Champions, actually there's 6 major story arcs that you go through that are based on different, I think, kind of classic comic ideas. So there's like a sci-fi alien story arc, and there's a mad genius story arc, and there's a story arc that's to deal with science, one that has to deal with arms. It's like these, you know, these areas where as you go through and we actually have those, sometimes they interweave, so you'll see 2 story arcs pass over each other. But really, I think the biggest goal of the game is to allow players to have these similar experiences, but to build the story for themselves. Like, how did you defeat Dr. Destroyer, you know, his bots in the lab that's hidden in Millennium City? Or, you know, how did you go about getting 20 heroes together to take down Quijibo on Monster Island, right? It's like the threats are out there, but how you deal with them and how you put that story together is really something that allows people to make the game their own.
You mentioned Dr. Destroyer, and I did a little research online and found out he destroyed Detroit. Why Detroit?
You know, I don't know why. Maybe because he just felt like he was tired of the 0-16 season. You know, I mean, I think he was a big Lions fan and got disappointed, right? But I think really it's interesting that the way that there's this melding between the real world and the world that was created for Champions. So Millennium City, which is the big central hub of the game, was built on the ruins of Detroit. And the idea was that it was going to be a city built for the new millennium. And so all these companies came in the game, right, and put, you know, hundreds of millions and billions of dollars into it, to making it this kind of, you know, metropolis that would be the city of the future and be really stand out. So rising up from the ashes of the destruction. So even though Dr. Destroyer, pretty evil guy, takes out, you know, a huge chunk of the city of Detroit, ends up turning into something better. So.
Very cool. You mentioned before 6 story arcs. Do you plan for maybe expansion packs for further story arcs so that characters can have further adventures down the line?
We'd love to do that. I mean, really, the game takes off if fans are, you know, enjoying it. That's the great thing about the actual paper and pencil game that the MMO is based off of. It's been around since 1981. So there's 28 years of story and places and characters and concepts and ideas that are out there that have been actually vetted by, you know, hundreds of thousands of gamers. So it's great. There's this really, really rich, you know, fabric for us to work with and to weave stories into. So, you know, I really hope that the game takes off, people love it, and we can continue to give them new places to play, new villains to meet, and new goals to reach for.
And the most important question, Bill, when can we see it on store shelves?
September 1st, so right around the corner. We'll be out US, Europe, everywhere, and we're really excited to get people in and playing.